The Black Depths. The Poseidon's Fist oil rig stood like a lone sentinel in the vast expanse of the North Atlantic, its steel frame a defiant monument to human ingenuity amidst nature's raw power. 200 miles from the nearest shoreline, it was an island of artificial light in an ocean of darkness. The crew of 30 men and women who called this place home for months at a time were used to the isolation, the constant hum of machinery, and the relentless assault of wind and waves. But on this particular night, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, an unsettling quiet had fallen over the rig. The usual cacophony of pumps and drills had given way to an eerie stillness, broken only by the occasional creak of metal and the distant rumble of thunder. Chapter 1. The First Malfunction. Chief Engineer Sarah Chen frowned at the readouts on her console. For the third time this week, the pressure gauges were showing impossible numbers. She tapped the screen, hoping it was just a glitch, but the anomalous readings persisted. "Hey, Mike," she called out to her assistant, who was busy calibrating a nearby valve. "Are you seeing this?" Mike Donovan, a stocky man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, ambled over. His eyes widened as he took in the numbers. "That can't be right. We'd be crushed like a tin can if the pressure was really that high." Sarah nodded grimly. "Exactly. And it's not just here. I've been getting weird readings from all over the rig. It's like," she hesitated, searching for the right words, "it's like something's messing with our sensors." "Could be the storm," Mike suggested, but his tone lacked conviction. "Maybe," Sarah conceded, though she didn't believe it for a second. She'd worked on rigs for over a decade, and she'd never seen anything like this. "I'm going to run a full diagnostic. Can you check the backup systems?" As Mike moved to comply, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that these malfunctions were just the beginning of something far worse. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. Dr. Elias Thorne, the rig's resident geologist, sat hunched over his workstation, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of multiple monitors. He'd been poring over seismic data for hours, trying to make sense of the anomalies that had been cropping up with increasing frequency. The readouts showed tremors, but not like any he'd seen before. They didn't match the patterns of tectonic activity, nor did they resemble the vibrations caused by their drilling operations. These were different, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. A sudden knock at his door made him jump. "Come in," he called out, trying to steady his nerves. Captain Amelia Reeves entered, her usually composed demeanor showing signs of strain. "Any progress, Doctor?" Elias shook his head. "Nothing conclusive. But I'll tell you this, Captain. Whatever's causing these tremors, it's not natural." Amelia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Look at this," Elias said, pulling up a waveform on one of his screens. "See how regular it is? Nature doesn't work like that. I don't know what this is." As if on cue, a low vibration rumbled through the rig, causing the lights to flicker momentarily. Both Elias and Amelia instinctively looked down at the floor, as if expecting to see the source of the disturbance. "It's getting stronger," Amelia murmured. Elias nodded, a chill running down his spine. "And more frequent." Chapter 3. The Abyss Stares Back. 2 days later, the situation had only worsened. The malfunctions had spread to nearly every system on the rig, and the crew was working around the clock to keep things operational. The constant stress and lack of sleep were beginning to take their toll. In the control room, Communications Officer Liam O'Brien was fighting a losing battle with the case radio equipment. No matter what he tried, he couldn't establish a clear connection with the mainland. All he got was static, punctuated by bursts of what sounded like whispers. "This is Poseidon's Fist calling HQ. Do you copy?" Liam repeated for what felt like the 100th time. The only response was a harsh crackle of static, followed by a series of low, guttural sounds that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Behind him, Captain Reeves was engaged in a heated discussion with Sarah Chen and Security Chief Marcus Blackwood. "We need to consider evacuation," Marcus was saying, his voice low but intense. "Whatever's happening here, it's not getting better." Sarah shook her head vehemently. "We can't just abandon the rig. Do you have any idea how much damage that would cause? Not just to the company, but to the environment? And what about the damage to our crew?" Marcus shot back. "We've already had 3 accidents in the past 24 hours. It's only a matter of time before someone gets seriously hurt." Amelia held up a hand, silencing them both. I understand your concerns, but right now, evacuation isn't an option. Even if we wanted to leave, we can't. The choppers are grounded due to the storm, and we've lost contact with our support vessels. A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the persistent static from Liam's radio. Then, suddenly, a new sound cut through the white noise, a long, mournful wail that seemed to come from the very depths of the ocean. Everyone froze, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fear. "What the hell was that?" Marcus whispered. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered and died, plunging the control room into darkness. In the pitch black, the wail came again, louder this time, accompanied by a violent tremor that shook the entire rig. As the emergency lights sputtered to life, casting an eerie red glow over the room, Captain Reeves made a decision. "Sarah, get those systems back online. Marcus, I want a full security sweep of the rig. Liam, keep trying to establish contact. Whatever's happening, we need to get to the bottom of it." Little did they know, the bottom was exactly where their troubles were coming from. Chapter 4, Descent into Madness. As days turned into a week, the situation on Poseidon's Fist continued to deteriorate. The malfunctions had become more than just an inconvenience. They were now a threat to the crew's very survival. Systems would come online and offline at random, pressure doors would seal and unseal without warning, and the temperature controls fluctuated wildly, turning parts of the rig into sweltering saunas and others into freezing chambers. But it wasn't just the rig that was falling apart. The crew's mental state was rapidly declining as well. Sleep deprivation, constant stress, and the oppressive feeling of being watched had everyone on edge. Dr. Thorne had taken to muttering to himself, scribbling complex equations and bizarre symbols on any surface he could find. When questioned, he would only say, "It's alive, it's all alive," before returning to his frantic calculations. Mike Donovan, Sarah's assistant, had become paranoid, convinced that something was lurking in the shadows of the machinery. He refused to enter certain areas of the rig alone, and had taken to carrying a wrench with him at all times for protection. Even the usually unflappable Captain Reeves was showing signs of strain. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she pored over reports and system readouts. It was during one of these late-night sessions that she noticed something odd on the sonar display. A massive shape, easily larger than the rig itself, seemed to be circling them at the very edge of their scanning range. But every time she tried to focus on it, the image would distort and vanish. As she leaned in closer, squinting at the screen, a sudden movement in her peripheral vision made her spin around. For a split second, she could have sworn she saw a dark, tentacle-like appendage slither across the floor and disappear into a vent. But when she blinked, it was gone. Amelia pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to clear her vision. "Get it together, Reeves," she muttered to herself. "You're seeing things." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just her imagination. Something was very, very wrong on Poseidon's Fist. Chapter 5, The Rising Tide. The breaking point came 3 days later. Sarah Chen was in the bowels of the rig, trying to manually restart the main power core, when she heard it, a sound like metal being torn apart, followed by an ominous gurgling. Her blood ran cold as she realized what was happening. "We've got a breach," she screamed into her radio, already sprinting towards the nearest pressure door. "Lower levels are flooding." The response was immediate. Alarms blared throughout the rig as emergency protocols kicked in. But it quickly became apparent that this was no ordinary breach. The water wasn't just coming in from one point, it was seeping in from everywhere, defying the laws of physics and the rig's structural integrity. In the control room, chaos reigned. Liam was frantically trying to send out distress calls, but all he got in return was that same haunting wail they'd heard before, now mixed with what sounded disturbingly like laughter. Marcus Blackwood burst in, his face pale. "We've lost contact with decks C and D. The water, it's not acting right. It's moving against gravity, flowing upwards." Captain Reeves made a decision. "This is it. We're evacuating. Get everyone to the lifeboats." But as the crew scrambled to escape, they found their path blocked at every turn. Pressure doors sealed themselves, trapping people in flooding compartments. Stairwells twisted and changed, leading to dead ends or looping back on themselves. It was as if the rig itself had come alive and was trying to keep them there. In the midst of the pandemonium, Dr. Thorne's voice came over the intercom, sounding eerily calm. "Don't you see? We woke it up. All our drilling, our probing, we disturbed something ancient, something that's been sleeping for millennia. And now it's hungry." His words were cut off by a blood-curdling scream, followed by the sound of rushing water. Chapter 6. The Black Depths. As the rig groaned and buckled around them, the surviving crew members found themselves herded towards the drilling platform. It was the highest point on the rig, and seemingly the only place not yet touched by the inexplicable flooding. Captain Reeves, Sarah Chen, Marcus Blackwood, and a handful of others huddled together, watching in horror as dark water lapped at the edges of the platform. But this wasn't ordinary seawater. It was thick, almost oily, and seemed to move with a purpose. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Before Amelia could respond, the entire rig shuddered violently. The sound of twisting metal filled the air as the platform began to tilt, sending them sliding towards the encroaching darkness. Marcus managed to grab onto a railing, reaching out to catch Amelia's hand. But as he pulled her to safety, he lost his balance. With a terrified yell, he plunged into the inky water below. "Marcus!" Amelia screamed, lunging forward only to be held back by Sarah. They watched, paralyzed with fear, as Marcus thrashed in the water. Then, suddenly, he went still. His eyes widened in terror as he was slowly pulled under, not by the waves, but by something beneath the surface. The remaining survivors pressed themselves against the highest point of the tilting platform, the black water rising inexorably towards them. In the distance, they could see massive shapes moving beneath the waves, circling the dying rig like vultures. As the first tendril of darkness lapped at her feet, Sarah turned to Amelia. "What are they?" Amelia shook her head, her eyes fixed on the horrors emerging from the depths. "Not they," she whispered. "It. One creature, many parts, ancient, patient, and we woke it up." The platform gave one final groan before collapsing entirely, sending them plunging into the waiting darkness. As the cold, thick liquid enveloped them, they felt countless appendages wrapping around their bodies, pulling them down into the black depths. In their final moments of consciousness, they understood the true horror of their situation. They hadn't just discovered a new creature. They had stumbled upon a slumbering god, a being so vast and alien that their minds couldn't comprehend it. And now, after eons of sleep, it was awake and hungry. The last thing they saw before the darkness took them was a massive eye, larger than the rig itself, opening beneath them. An eye filled with ancient malevolence and insatiable hunger. And then there was only the black depths. Epilogue. Months later, a salvage team approached the last known coordinates of Poseidon's fist. They found no trace of the rig or its crew. The ocean at this location was unusually calm, almost unnaturally so. As they prepared to leave, disappointed by the fruitless search, their sonar operator called out in confusion. "Captain, you need to see this." On the screen was an image that defied explanation. Far below them, at depths that should have been empty ocean, they detected a vast network of structures. Metal and organic matter seemed to have fused together, creating a grotesque underwater metropolis that pulsed with alien life. And at the center of it all was a shape that looked disturbingly like Poseidon's fist, twisted and transformed, but still recognizable. As they watched in horrified fascination, a single message crackled through their radio, in a voice that sounded like a dozen people speaking in unison. "Turn back. The depths are ours now." The salvage team wasted no time in heeding the warning. As their ship sped away from the site, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by something vast and hungry, something that was considering whether to let them escape or drag them down into the black depths to join its growing kingdom. In the end, the ocean kept its secrets, and the true fate of Poseidon's fist and its crew remained a mystery. A chilling tale whispered among sailors, a warning about the dangers of delving too deep into the unknown reaches of our world. For in the vastness of the ocean, in the crushing black depths, there are some things that are better left undisturbed, some ancient slumbers that should never be broken, and some hungers that can never be satisfied.